So this project has to do with taking a Blender file and printing it out. So the idea behind this is that we're going to use our 3D printer to actually print out an object that you've created. You're allowed to use previous files if you want to. There's a few things that you want to watch out for. So to start with, let's open up a Blender file and I'll show you the basics of it. So one thing to watch out for, make sure that whatever the model is that you're going to create has a relatively flat bottom. It's got to actually sit on the surface of the printer, so you need something relatively flat that it can adhere to. So something that's really tall and thin is not very good. So if I was to take this cube and try and basically grab this face and grab it off over here and rotate it at an angle, that wouldn't work. Also, this kind of a thing where you have this edge that's out over space, since it's basically printing in layers and from left to right, roughly, you have to make sure that it has something to print onto in the previous layer. So you can do gradual shapes, so like something like this is probably okay, where you have this gradual edge, but if you had like something that's overhanging nothing, that would be bad. So if I extruded this and did something like this wouldn't work because this face has nothing to print on. It's printing over empty air, which isn't very good at holding up plastic. So let's say that I want to actually create something. What are the steps I need to do to make it actually into something the printer can understand? So I'm going to go ahead and add in just another little sphere. Just put it down here. Something like that. So I could print something like this out. The first step is that we need to actually make sure all of the objects are one. You can't have multiple objects. So if I go into object mode, currently it's all one object. If I had put it in an object mode, so let's go back and say that this cube is a separate one. So by the way, if you ever want to separate objects, you hit P for separate, oddly enough, and then selection. And now if I go back into object mode, now there are two different objects. To join them, if I had already done this and they were two separate objects, so the Jeep for example, then what you can do is do Control J to join them. And now notice that they're all one object. The other thing is that you have to make sure that it's a continuous surface. You can't have holes in it. So if I go in and delete out this face, that's a problem. The printer can't deal with that. So the way that you can figure out if there are any holes in your model is make sure that you go into edit mode, make sure everything is unselected. And if you go under select and do non-manifold, or do Shift Control Alt M if you want to do that, it'll highlight areas where there are problems in your thing. And basically what I need to do here is I need to put a face in to make it a smooth, continuous outer surface. So now, when I do this and select all the non-manifold points, notice then nothing gets selected. All right, the final thing I need to do in order to export it is I need to make sure I have the actual object itself selected. If you don't, it will export nothing. And under File, Export, and .stl file. This is the same sort of file that CAD programs use, and is used for basically printing and mechanical things. So to print, and export this, and here it is, the .stl file. What will happen after this is this file will be taken to the computer that has the printer attached to it. It'll run through a slicer program, which basically figures out a path. So if you imagine like this is going to be printed in layers. So the slicer figures out how to slice each layer up and figures out what kind of print path it's going to need. So like to print the bottom, it's probably going to have to go around the outer edge and then have some sort of fill pattern. And so it actually figures out what that path is going to be for the printer. And then it goes to the next layer up, figures out the outer edge and the path it's going to take. So that's what the slicer program does. And then we actually run that sliced up code, which is called G code, on the printer itself, and it actually prints it.